everyone, hi, Philly Joe back with another video, another top 10 video. Hope you enjoyed the last one. I think it was about 6 weeks ago now, of my top 10 favourite video games of all time. That took quite a while to populate and figure out exactly why each game was in its specific spot, because every single game meant so much to me that they had to be there, and given the reasons why. So what I thought I'd do today is list my top 10 video game consoles of all time. So a few things. I'm not going to be including any home computers, such as any Commodore 64, Amiga or anything like that, or ZX Spectrum or Amstrads or anything like that. I might populate another video in the future, but to be honest, I've always preferred video game consoles over home computers, even though I've loved playing other people's home computers such as Commodore Amiga and Amstrad CPC 464. Those two spring to mind quite heavily, and the Commodore 64 as well. But this list is just for consoles only. Sorry, I've got my list here and I'm just going by my list as I go on. I'm also not including any handheld consoles. So that will include Nintendo Game Boy, Sega Game Gear, Atari Lynx, etc, etc, Nintendo DS. I will most likely populate a top 5 video for those, as I can't really think of 10 handheld consoles I've played, to be honest. So yeah, a top 5 will do with them. Probably in a couple of weeks' time or something like that, when I've populated another list. So this is my top 10 favourite video game consoles of all time. I'll give a few honourable mentions first, because this is a very tough list to have made, and I'm glad I'm making these lists, because as I probably said in the first video, in about 10 years time or so, I'll just see what I've said now to what I believe to be the best in the future. So some honourable mentions go to consoles such as the Atari 2600. I do have an Atari 2600. A friend of mine let me buy it off him almost 20 years ago now, but as it was before my time, being born in 1982 and the console coming out in the late 70s, it wasn't really my era. I understand the popularity of the Atari and what it done for the video game industry, thoroughly appreciate it and respect it, and I do have, as I say, a console, but yeah, it didn't make the top 10 list, even though it's got some cracking games for it, such as Space Invaders, the original Mario Brothers I've got, Centipede. I've played a few others, but none really spring to mind at the moment. But as I say, not on the list. Also the Atari Jaguar, which was the first 64-bit console. Again, not played it myself. So yeah, it's not made the list. I'm also not including the most recent generation of consoles, so it won't be including the PlayStation 4, the Microsoft Xbox One, or the Nintendo Switch. Nintendo Switch because I've not even played it. Microsoft Xbox One because I only played about 2 games, and the PS4, that will be in my top 10 list next time around. Trust me, that is a phenomenal console. I cannot stop playing it, and there's so many good games out for it at the moment. But as I say, no current generation consoles, and just anything pre-2015 or something like that. So yeah, other honourable mentions go to the Nintendo Wii and the Nintendo Wii U, both brilliant consoles, and also the Microsoft Xbox 360. As many people who know me know that I enjoy Sony PlayStation more than Microsoft Xbox. So unfortunately, the Xbox 360 didn't make it into my count. But as I said before, this is my top 10. This is my personal top 10. This isn't, you know, as it stands, the best consoles of all time. This is my favourite top 10 consoles of all time. So I'll kick straight off. I've already been talking about probably about 5 or 6 minutes. Anyway, number 10. It was a toss-up between 2 consoles that were around about the same time, which were released around about the same time as the PlayStation 2, it was either going to be the Nintendo GameCube or the Microsoft Xbox, the original. And I've given it to the Microsoft Xbox because I respect that console so much. I remember having it back in 2002, I think it was released or something like that. And the games for it were just brilliant. I played Halo all the time. Halo 2, I played through it. I didn't play it all the time like I did the original. And there was a couple of other games I've just got listed here that I've got to give a, I had to write down all the games that I did play for these consoles because I don't want to forget them when I'm calling out which console they are. Project Gotham Racing, which was a string off the original, I think it was Metropolis Street Racer from the Sega Dreamcast. Project Gotham Racing was the same team, 1 and 2, and might be a third unless that was on 360, but yeah, awesome games. So Halo games. Xbox did pay Sega to release their games that they had on the Dreamcast, or didn't even make it on the Dreamcast after its lifespan, onto Xbox, and they released an actual English version of Shenmue 2. They also released Jet Set Radio Future, the sequel to one of my favourite video games of all time, and it was really good. They also had games like Half-Life 2, and there was a game called Blood Rain. If anyone ever played that, it's quite an obscure title, but if you've not played it, try it out because it's such fun. You and 4 other players can beat, it's a massive beat 'em up. Great, and a really good soundtrack as well, really good fun. And Super Monkey Ball Deluxe I've got written down here because I love that game. I love Super Monkey Ball. It was on the GameCube originally, yes I know, but this deluxe version has it all. It has all the extras, loads of other options and whatnot. And there was one more game that I was going to mention for the Xbox original, the original Xbox. What was it? I'll come back to that. Anyway, so my 10th favourite console is the Microsoft Xbox. So yeah, my 9th console is the Sega Master System. This 8-bit console came out about a year after the Nintendo came out, and a friend of mine up the top of the street, 2 friends of mine had it at the top of the street, so I used to go around to their house and play it, and all those great memories of playing these games always stick with me. There was a version of Sonic the Hedgehog, not as powerful as the Mega Drive version, but that was really good, with Sonic 2, Sonic Chaos, and who could forget the built-in Alex Kidd in Miracle World. Brilliant game, hard as nails, but great fun nonetheless. And yeah, just to mention some other games, Wonder Boy 3: The Dragon's Trap. It's one of the games that makes me think of good times when I was a kid. Playing that, it was really hard, but loved it, absolutely loved it. California Games 1 and 2, such fun. Shadow of the Beast, the Ninja. The Ninja was great. I swear, you're running along just throwing ninja stars at like baddies, killing them, and if you press, because the console the controller had a number 1 and number 2, you press them together and you do a disappearing act for a couple of seconds, and the soundtrack was brilliant as well. So a couple of other games I'd like to mention that I used to play around my friend's house back in the day. Fantasy Zone, there's a crazy shooting game. Castle of Illusion with Mickey Mouse, brilliant platformer with some great music. R-Type, and also the Sega Master System versions of Hang On and Space Harrier, and also Rampage, brilliant game. I was actually making a film about Rampage with The Rock in, which I can't believe. I went to see, what film did we go to see? Just went to see Jumanji a couple of weeks ago, and Rampage was there as one of the trailers. So yeah, probably go give that a watch. It's probably terrible, I don't care. So yeah, thorough, brilliant nostalgia. Whenever it comes to Sega Master System, always happy to play it. Oh, Marble Madness as well, that's another one that comes to mind. Fantastic game, really love that game. So yeah, moving on to my 8th favourite console, which is the Nintendo 64. This is a really hard list to do, almost as hard as the top 10 games, because I adore the N64. Poet, I don't know it, but such great times with, I was a teenager when it came out, and I'll never forget the first time I saw GoldenEye 007 and played it with a couple of friends. Wow, did not stop playing that game for months. Absolutely incredible, one of the best multiplayer games of all time. I think it was about 6 months after its launch that they released Super Mario 64, which actually made my top 10 favourite games of all time. And that game is just a perfect game in my eyes, absolutely perfect. Also Mario Kart 64, wonderful iteration of the Mario Kart series. A couple of others to list here. Of course, Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. I'm still actually playing through that at the minute and loving every minute of it, so that may make my top 10 favourite video games of all time in a couple of years, we'll see. Other games list here quickly. Banjo-Kazooie, wonderful platformer, such good characters, and it's a proper Rare game, as in the company Rare. Turok, Dinosaur Hunter, and Turok 2, Seeds of Evil, great games there. Super Smash Brothers, the original, I remember playing that quite a lot when I had the N64. Thoroughly enjoyed that. It was kind of a new take on a multiplayer beat 'em up with 4 players, and to this day it's doing phenomenal with its Super Smash Brothers series. I think it's on the Wii U. Whether they'll port it to the Switch, we'll see. But there has been Super Smash Brothers Brawl, Melee, Super Smash Brothers Wii, and then Wii U. So yeah, it's doing really well. Diddy Kong Racing, what a fantastic driving game that is. Brilliant racing game. I've only recently started playing that, but I'm thoroughly enjoying it. A friend of mine absolutely adores that game. And it's like you can drive, swim, and fly. A bit like there's a game on the PS3, Sonic and Sega All Stars Racing, but the sequel, Sonic and All Stars Racing Transformed, also allows you to drive, fly, and swim within a boat, like driving a boat on sea. And yeah, I love those kind of games, and Diddy Kong Racing's no exception. Probably the best in the multi way of actually driving around in circuits. And also Donkey Kong 64, love that game. It's fantastic, and the Nintendo 64 is just a wonderful console. I've got mine here. Well, here's my pad. Still playing Super Mario 64 all the time, as well as a bit of Zelda. So yeah, so that's was that number 8? I think it was. Yeah, number 8. So number 7, I'm giving it to the original Nintendo Entertainment System. It is so nostalgic for me, as the first ever video game, as I said on my original first video. The first ever video game I played was Super Mario Brothers, and as you can see on my channel, I've been doing a lot of playthroughs with the original Super Mario Brothers, because it's the first video game I ever played, and I've never completed, and I'm still going to give it loads of opportunities to try and complete that game again. Sorry if I sound quite what's that noise? Oh, it's the radiator. If I sound a bit gruff, I was very ill last week and still getting over it with a big cough. Anyway, yeah, sorry, where was I? The Nintendo Entertainment System, absolutely wonderful console. Such a simple setup with its controller. You've got D-pad, A, B, select and start, and yeah, to this day I'm still playing it all the time and absolutely love it. I was lucky enough when I was about 12 or 13, a friend of mine let me buy his off him for, and I think it was like £5 with about 8 games. And yeah, I've never let go of it. As well, crikey, it's a guy way over 20 years ago now. So yeah, absolutely love this console. And the games, I'm just going to list a few off here. Ones that I remember from back in the day to ones that I'm still playing today. As I say, the Super Mario Brothers series 1 and 2 and 3 was phenomenal. I'll be using that word a lot in this in this countdown. Double Dragon was another game, very nostalgic for me, going around friends' houses and playing Double Dragon, see if we can get through to the end of the game, me and a mate. And then when we tried to, after we either complete the game or it's game over, and then we could fight each other in the game B mode, I think it was. And yeah, it's great times. Also games like Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles, really hard game but very nostalgic. Recently picked up a copy of Excite Bike. Yeah, really good. I've always heard of Excite Bike, but never actually played it. But yeah, been playing this quite a lot, and yeah, it's really good fun actually. So happy with that. I've got quite a few of the games down there for Nintendo, but yeah, I'll just reel these off. Duck Hunt, so good. It's one of my favourite shooters of all time. Hard as nails though. Donkey Kong Jr., Ivan Stewart's Super Off-Road. That's quite an obscure one. If you do have a NES, a NES Classic Mini or something like that, or the original, and you could pick this game up, give that a go. The Super Off-Road game. It is a fantastic game. Very nostalgic for me as well. It's what my friend had when I used to go around his house. A Boy and His Blob. I've not got that anymore, but that was a very clever title. If you've ever played it, I think they released a Wii version as well. But yeah, that was a really good game. It was where you were a lad, a boy, and you had a blob, and the blob was alive, and it was about half the size of you, and you used to select a specific jelly bean to give him, and he would morph into a shape to help you overcome obstacles in the game itself. And yeah, you'd turn into either like a jack or a rocket or a ladder, and there was all sorts of things. But yeah, A Boy and His Blob, give that a try if you're into your Nintendo, original Nintendo. Dr. Mario, and one of my favourite NES titles, Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers. Fantastic 2-player game that is. So if you ever get to play that as well, give it a go. But yeah, original Nintendo, number 7. Could have been higher, but I'm still playing through a lot of the back catalogue, so we'll see in a couple of years how it goes. I've missed off quite a lot of classic titles there, but as I say, I'm just marking down the games that I remember playing against my favourite consoles of all time. So we go to number 6. Let's have a quick drink. So at number 6, we've got the Sega Mega Drive. I've always been a big fan of Sega and Nintendo, so the majority of their classic consoles are on here, as you can see. Sega Mega Drive, what can you say that's not been said about the Sega Mega Drive? It was as a cracking competitor in the 16-bit era. It started the 16-bit era, to be fair, and the games that were on it were absolute classics, ranging from the Sonic the Hedgehog series, which didn't actually start until 1991, and the Sega Mega Drive came out late 80s. So Sonic was a few years off, like the original release date, but still made a big impact with games such as Golden Axe, the original arcade games such as Super Hang-On, Space Harrier, Outrun, all made it to the Sega Mega Drive just before the big Sonic era, as you'd say. But yeah, Sonic the Hedgehog, as I said in my top 10 video games, the first ever Sonic the Hedgehog on Sega Mega Drive is my second favourite game of all time. Who can forget the Streets of Rage series? I can't. I listen to the soundtrack all the time. I play the game a lot, either with friends or on my Todd or with family. Golden Axe, Shinobi, Kid Chameleon, Comic Zone, So, Michael Jackson's Moonwalker, and I wrote that down because I just specifically remember playing that when I was a kid and thinking, what's going on? This is crazy, because I hadn't even seen the film yet. But then when I watched the film, it all kind of made sense as to what's going on in the game. Very good game if you've never played that. Sonic Spinball, pinball version of Sonic. Also games like Strider, which a friend of mine kindly donated to me. Big up to you, Mike. Hopefully you're watching and laughing at my awkward video. I'm trying not to be awkward. Excuse me. And also a puzzle game, Columns. Absolutely brilliant game. I love that game so much. It's up there with Tetris with really good puzzle games. Excuse me a sec. So yeah, Sega Mega Drive, absolute classic. I'll stop banging on about it. If you've ever played it, you know exactly what I mean. How brilliant it is, and well deserved in my top 10 consoles of all time. So number 5, going with the Sony PlayStation 2. Now this console, it means a lot to me because it was the first console that I really started collecting for, and before I knew it I had 60 odd titles, and I currently have almost 400 titles for it. And honestly, the amount of video games that I bought for that with my own money in my late teens, early 20s, stacked up against the wall, all these like big DVD boxes of PlayStation 2 games. Wonderful, absolutely brilliant early 20s memories with this console. Yeah, so well deserved at number 5. It might have been a bit higher, but as I say, I'm being really tough with myself on this list. Games, I just read off some games here. My favourites: Devil May Cry 1, 2 and 3, wonderful games, in the vein of like Bayonetta and things like that. But Devil May Cry kind of started it all when it comes to action in and around, well, shooting and swordplay. It's just, well, it didn't really start it all, but it started a really kick-ass kind of genre. The Grand Theft Auto series on PlayStation 2 was just revolutionary. As I said in my first video, Grand Theft Auto 3, in my eyes, one of the most revolutionary games of all time. Going from the top-down view to 3D, that was it. When I saw that video game, I said, this is it. This is the future of video games from now on. Doing whatever you want in a sandbox environment. It was just awesome. So yeah, big shout out to Grand Theft Auto, Vice City and San Andreas. Your gameplay and soundtracks are super awesome. I love them so much. Other PS2 games I've got to say that I love: Eco and Shadow of the Colossus, Final Fantasy 10 and 12. I did play through both of them. I completed 10, but I didn't complete 12. 12's really hard. The Metal Gear Solid series on PS2, Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3, brilliant games. Jak and Daxter, that made my top 10 video games of all time. Silent Hill 2, what a freaky game. That game freaked me out, and it's wonderful. It's like a work of art in a video game. Prince of Persia, Sands of Time, I mentioned this as well on my list. Well, it wasn't on my list, but it was one of my honourable mentions. Max Payne, what a brilliant video game that was. And the God of War series, of course. I've got 1 and 2 down here, which are the PS2. Plenty of other games on the PS2. Those are the ones that stick out for me. And yeah, absolutely love that console still. I play a lot of the HD remakes and remasters on the PS3 and PS4. But every now and then I like to bust out the PS2 and play some classics. So yeah, that was console number 5. My 4th favourite console of all time. I thought this console would be a little bit higher, but I'm actually making a change here live. I did put the wrong number in for one of them. The Sony PlayStation 3 is my 4th favourite console of all time. I've got it just there actually. So this beats the Sony PlayStation 2 by 1 spot. This machine I bought in 2010. It's been out since 2007, and I absolutely adore this machine. It's so good, and when it came, it was my first console with wireless controllers, so that was a nice load of freedom to not have a wired console anymore. The PS3 has just so many features with it, and so many good games that I had to have it in my top 10. And yes, it topped the PS2. I didn't think it would, but after I've gone through the list of games that I love, I actually thought, yes, PS3 just pips it. So I'm just going to say a couple of games. The Last of Us, of course, being my favourite video game of all time. The Uncharted series, about a year ago, I eventually bought the Uncharted series 1, 2 and 3 from, I think it was Cash Generator or Cash Converters, for £1 each, and I played through all 3 of them and loved every single one of them. Fantastic games. Other games such as Batman Arkham Asylum, what a brilliant game that is. I did start playing Arkham City. I know a lot of people hold that in high regard, and I've been meaning to play that again because I've got it downloaded on the PS3. So I need to get back and play Arkham City again. I think there's some others after that, but yeah, I'll make sure I get through that first. God of War 3, brilliant game. Very violent. Heavy Rain. Games like this, a lot of people are a bit about, but I think they're brilliant. Such as Beyond Two Souls, 2 games by Quantic Dream, Heavy Rain and Beyond Two Souls. Quite unique games, story driven. A lot like the Telltale game series, where you make a certain decision and the game will affect the game as it progresses. Yeah, we've got Little Big Planet, wonderful platformer. The reboot of the Tomb Raider franchise. I've got the 2013 version of that, and that was really good. Also Street Fighter 4. I didn't buy the original Street Fighter 4, I bought Super Street Fighter 4, and I think that's the game I played the most on the PS3. And when Ultra Street Fighter 4 came out, I think it was about 2013, 2014, I bought that, and that was the Ultimate Edition of Street Fighter 4. Wonderful, wonderful game. Used to play a lot online. My Akuma would play my mate Mike's Ken all the time. We still have that rivalry to this day, and yeah, wouldn't have it any other way. And yeah, of course, the Borderlands series I did play. I've been meaning to play a lot more of it, and I'm looking forward. And Assassin's Creed I started as well on the PS3 only earlier this year actually, but I started the PS3 again and started that. So I'm going to stick with that for a bit and make my way through the Assassin's Creed series. So there's a lot of games that I haven't played, but this is just a list of the consoles and the games that I haven't. Well, I'm blubbering on. But yeah, PS3, love it. So that was my 4th favourite console. Now we're going to the top 3. Now this is the nitty gritty. 3 consoles that define my love for video games. Number 3 goes to Sony PlayStation. The original Sony PlayStation takes my 3rd spot in my top video game consoles of all time. That was the first ever console I purchased with my own money. I did a paper round for 6 months, saved up, I don't know how much it was a week, probably about 5 to 10 quid, and not for 6 months, for about 2 or 3 months, and I purchased a Sony PlayStation with 2 controllers and a memory card, and the DualShock version wasn't out yet, but I bought that and Tekken 2, the video game, and I remember paying 50 quid for Tekken 2 and thinking, ow. But yeah, it was that video game console just revolutionised the 3D era of home video game consoling. As you know, there was Sega Saturn, Sony PlayStation. My friend had the Sega Saturn. Hi Luke, if you're watching. And used to go around here to play Sega Worldwide Soccer, Sega Rally. Now I had my Sony PlayStation at home, so I was able to compare the two. And I had games such as Final Fantasy VII, Tomb Raider, and quite a few others that came along. I'll just reel off some of my favourite PS1 titles of all time. I'm glad I wrote all this down because I would have never remembered all these classic titles. Tomb Raider 1, 2 and 3. There was also the Last Revelation as well, the fourth. And there might have been one more. Not sure. Metal Gear Solid, brilliant. Parappa the Rapper, unique, funny, and I love it. I know a lot of people don't, but this is mine. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. The second game did make my top 10 list. A wonderful, wonderful series. Never stopped playing it. Of course, there's a Final Fantasy series. I've got 7, 8 and 9. Loved 7, loved 8. 9 was really hard, so I gave up after the first disc or so. Excuse me. Silent Hill, incredible game. Resident Evil 1, 2 and 3. Nemesis. Scared the absolute out of me. It's ridiculous what Resident Evil 1 and 2 and 3 were able to do, like playing that in the dark at night. Tekken, of course the first 3 Tekken games were on there, Tekken 3 being in my top 10 video games. Crash Bandicoot, who could forget Crash Bandicoot, eh? Awesome, awesome, awesome games. Love them so much. Gran Turismo, brilliant. Absolutely blew my mind when that first came out. Couldn't believe the graphics, especially the second game as well. The improvement that what they made up to the first game, incredible. I think the game that had 2 games that had the best graphics on the PS1, and comment in the section below if you're not if you don't believe it. Well, if you've got any other games that you think have amazing graphics on the PS1. Wipeout 2097, the sequel to Wipeout, and also Tekken 3. Them 2 games always stand out for me for the best graphics on PS1. There was also, if you want to go a bit more obscure, there was a game called Poi Poi, which was a multiplayer battle arena game. You could play up to 4 players if you had your multi-tap. And also Pool Shark, where I got my tag name Philly Joe. One of the bosses of the game's name's Philly Joe, and I have fond memories of playing Pool Shark because they had such crazy characters. I've said in my video before. I've said in the previous video. So yeah, PS1, 3rd favourite console of all time. So down to the last 2. Let me just see if the camera's still working. Yep, we're still rolling. Hopefully I'll cut that bit. If not, that would be half funny. So my second favourite console of all time, the Super Nintendo. This machine is just, there's the word again, phenomenal. I like AJ Styles in wrestling. There's so many games for this console, and it was just such a massive leap from the 8-bit era to the 16-bit era. Sega Mega Drive was already out. I remember being in the playground at primary school and having this full-blown argument with people that all had Sega Mega Drives. My friends that had all these everyone had a Sega Mega Drive. And my friend Henry, he was the only one in school that had a Super Nintendo, and I got to play it one time, and that was it. I was like, this is the console I have to have. Now it's quite strange because I actually had the Sony PlayStation before I actually had a Super Nintendo. A Super Nintendo was sold. It was given to me for Christmas, I think about a year after I had my Sony PlayStation, and I actually used to play my Super Nintendo more than my Sony PlayStation at the time. And we're talking mid-90s, about 96, something like that. So what had happened was the Super Nintendo was coming to the end of its life. So my mum and dad got me one for Christmas, probably dirt cheap because everyone was getting rid of theirs, buying a PlayStation. And I got this Super Nintendo with about 10 games and loved every single one of them. And yeah, it's just such an awesome console that I still play to this day. I was playing it at Christmas with my wife's cousin, and we were playing Mario Kart, and it was just good times. Always good times with the Super Nintendo. I'm going to reel off a couple of games here that I love. The Street Fighter 2 series, of course, we've got to put in Street Fighter there. Street Fighter 2 Turbo being my favourite. Also, Super Mario Kart, as I said. Speed Racer was a Mario Kart clone in a way, but again, brilliant tracks, themes, modes, characters. Great game if you've never played it. Super Mario World, one of the best platformers of all time. Turtles 4, Turtles in Time. Brilliant, both single player and multiplayer game. In the kind of same vein as Streets of Rage and Final Fight and games like Double Dragon, where you're going along and delivering street justice. Star Wing, which is Star Fox in America. Brilliant. Then graphics for Star Wing. I know there was a Super FX chip used in the cartridges for the game, and it looks great. It looks really good. To this day, you know, graphics are obsolete. These graphics are obsolete as to what can be done today, but back then blew my mind. Killer Instinct. Killer Instinct is one of my favourite video games of all time, and I know it wasn't in my list, but still, I used to go to the Megablast in Coventry, where I'm from, and they had a Killer Instinct arcade cabinet. Now I know the Super Nintendo version of Killer Instinct was inferior to the arcade, but I didn't care. As soon as that came out on Super Nintendo, I was there the next day and I bought it. I remember it only being $29.99, whereas usually you're paying between 50 and 60 quid when it comes to Super Nintendo games. So, or 40 and 60. I think I remember Donkey Kong Country being almost 70 quid at one point. I think it was like 69.99 or something. There was a game, definitely there was 70 quid. But yeah, these games are just timeless. Anyone could come around now. So I'll keep looking down, and I'll show you why I keep looking down. Because of my Super Nintendo collection. Just pull out a few games here. And big up again to Mike, who's given me a lot of these games. Super Celeste, Stunt Race, Cannon Fodder, Alien 3, Super Mario Kart, Turtles 4, Turtles in Time, Street Fighter 2 Turbo, along many others. I think I'm up to about 60 now. So, thoroughly happy with my Super Nintendo collection so far. So, yes, Super Nintendo, thoroughly deserved of second favourite video game console of all time. So thank you very much for watching this. It's always very, therapeutic to talk on camera to why these consoles mean so much to me. And yeah, I know it's quite amateurish, and big shout out also to my friend Chris, who's let me borrow his tripod for this video, and hopefully a couple more videos in the future. We're also working on how to capture some more game footage and do playthroughs with probably a camera facing me playing the game and whatnot. So we'll see. So, number one. Anyone that knows me knows what this video game console, like what my favourite video game console of all time is. And it's right here. It's the Sega Dreamcast. This thing is everything to me. This video games console is just brilliant. It's perfect. I love it to pieces. I will never part with it. it had the best video games, some of the best video games of all time. It was the first ever video games console I went online with. Back in the year 2000, I plugged in there. There's a 33, what is it? I even forgot what they're called now, the modems. 33K modem, right in there. And it's just, I remember plugging it in and playing Shenmue and uploading video game scores for when you're playing in the arcade in-game. You can play like Hang On, as well as a couple of other video games. Space Harrier? Something like that. Anyway, I remember uploading my score and I was really high up the board. I was like, oh, this is the best thing ever. And I actually played a couple of other games online, such as Toy Racer, Quake 3, and the connection wasn't very good at all. Well, what do you expect with a 33K modem? But I didn't care. It was my first ever online experience. And it's got 4 ports for 4 controllers, and the games, sorry, my voice is going, video's nearly over, I promise. Yes, it's fighting games that you can have like Power Stone. You can have all 4 people play at the same time. It's noisy as hell. This thing sounds like a wind turbine when it's on, but I don't care. I love it to pieces, and it's got some of my favourite video games of all time. There's Shenmue 1, Shenmue 2, Jet Set Radio, phenomenal, my favourite game soundtrack of all time. Other games I've listed here. Resident Evil, Code Veronica. The graphics on this thing, this was out almost like a year and a half before the Sony PlayStation 2 came out. A year to a year and a half. And when the PlayStation 2 came out, I was less than impressed with it. Like the first 2 years of the PS2, it didn't stand anywhere near what the Dreamcast was doing. The Dreamcast had amazing graphics, and I think it was discontinued in like 2002 or something. And the poor, the poor machine had no support. I think it sold a couple of million units compared to Sony PS2, which is the biggest selling video game console of all time, at 130 million units. That thing had a couple of million, and it has a cult following, and I'm part of that cult, because it had some of the greatest video games of all time. The definitive version of Soul Calibur. If you've ever played Soul Calibur on this thing, you know how good it looks. It stands up to PS3 games in my eyes. It's so good. Rayman 2, Power Stone, as I mentioned, Skies of Arcadia, games like Metropolis Street Racer, I said Jet Set Radio before, a video game called Rez, which I think they've got Rez Infinite now on the virtual reality headset. Rez, awesome game. This machine just oozes quality. Sports games like Virtua Tennis, Sega Rally 2, fighting games, Virtua Fighter 3, Team Battle, as I said before, Power Stone, Soul Calibur. I've got a couple of other games down there, but I'm still playing games to this day and thoroughly enjoying it. And I love this console so much, and it's going to be very hard to topple that machine as my favourite video game console of all time, the Sega Dreamcast. So thank you so much for watching, and yeah, I'll keep the videos coming. I'll do a playthrough. Probably if I can hook the Dreamcast up, I'm going to do some videos of Sega Dreamcast games, because that thing deserves its place in video game history. And whenever I see top video game consoles lists, if that's not in it, I'm not happy. I'm so passionate about that console that I want everyone to have played a Sega Dreamcast, because it didn't sell well. Not a lot of people I know had one or have played one. My friend Mike came around last year and he had a quick go on it. He played Power Stone and he liked the feel of the controller, and he really enjoyed it. He said he only played it like 10 minutes, thoroughly enjoyed the game. The Soul Calibur was great as well. And yeah, the more people are going to get to play this, hopefully they can see how good this video game console was. So thank you so much for watching, and yes, as I say, I'll keep all the videos up. I hope you liked the intro video at the beginning of the video as well. Big thank you again to my friend Chris let me borrow this tripod, and it's helping me out with another little setup up here in the loft, as well as help like doing the intro video for me. So thanks, Chris. So yes, thank you so much for watching my video, and yeah, keep on gaming. Thanks everyone. Bye bye.